Hello and welcome to the first webinar in a four-part series based on finishing insights and implications from both the Under-21 and Senior 2020 European Championships. This webinar will explore open play goals only with a view on the headlines that to come out of the tournaments and some of the goal locations from the tournament. We'll look at this information with a focus on grassroots and youth coaching. My name's Simon Houston and I'm joined by Mark Neville. Okay, so this particular webinar, we'll be looking to observe some data we've collected on how goals were scored during the two tournaments. Nevs is then going to take us into some of the coaching implications to come out of that data. And then we're going to showcase how understanding these implications may help inform and guide a practice design. Okay, so just an overview then of the project. We looked at open play goals only, as I said, from each tournament and excluded own goals. That left us with 54 open play goals analysed from the Under-21 Championship and 94 from the Senior Euros from the summer. And there were just under 3 goals per game in each tournament. Some of the headlines to come out of each tournament now. You can see the proportion of open play goals versus set play goals. And we can also see that the Senior Euros had a high proportion of goals from open play. There are many reasons for this. Some of the penalty misses had a direct impact on these numbers. In terms of the body part that was used to score the goals, both tournaments favoured right foot finishes, as we may imagine, but the proportion of headed goals were vastly different between the two tournaments. And some of the shots and conversion rates, we can see that in the Under-21 Championship, there were 7 shots from open play per team per 90 minutes. And 1 in 5 of every one of these shots were converted into goals. Similar numbers in the Senior Euros. Okay, so let's have a look at where the goals were scored from. This first visual is where the goals were scored from in terms of a heat map and the number of goals in each zone there. We can see the spread from both tournaments, and we can see that there are a lot more goals as a percentage from outside the box in the senior competition. Reasons for this might be styles and strategies, might be the way that teams set up to defend, might be ability of senior players compared to under-21s. We can talk about that in more depth as we go. When we begin to group the data in a different way, this is exactly the same data as what we've just seen. When we begin to group it in a different way, we can start to then see the prominence of certain key zones. And the thing that we've picked out here is the prominence of that second 6-yard box area. You can see 37% of all open play goals in the Under-21 Championship were scored from that second 6-yard box zone, and 44% in the Senior Euros. So a lot of information there, Nevs, a lot of data that's been presented, hopefully simple enough to digest. You've had a look at some of that data and you've come up with some implications from that.
Yeah, there's some great data in there, isn't there? So let's start with relevant area size and the location for the area. So if we're going to practice scoring goals, well, let's locate the area in the part of the pitch where we score goals. So if you're lucky enough of having a goal area, let's have one. If not, let's create one. So the area size, too big. We don't quite get the intensity and the experience of having to defend a goal and shoot from range. We can see there that the goals from range, that's probably a different practice. That's 18% to 9%. That's a different practice. So let's concentrate on the rest of those finishes in the second 6-yard box. So let's have a second 6-yard box in our practice. So let's dial up the experiences of finishing, shooting, and finishing under pressure, and probably trade off the experiences of build-up play, expansive play, and perhaps other elements such as crossing. Let's get rid of those. Next one, mate. Sorry. Use of goals. So important. So a very wise coachman said to me, every practice should have goals in it. Goal scoring is evocative. The sound of a ball rolling down the back of a net, the sound of a ball hitting a post and going in, that is evocative. And kids adults need to hear that as often as they can. So let's include goals in all our practices, particularly if it's the finishing one. I guess one of the things I'd like people to think about is what goals they use. So let's use the correct size for the correct age of player we've got. If we're just using mini goals, they're easy to block and we might not get that finishing experience. If we're using adult goals for kids, they're probably too big and it's going to be probably demoralizing, or it might promote a different sort of finish. So let's use the right size of goals. If we situate the goals on the line like they are in a game, we can block them, we can get in front, the keeper can have them. If we've got no keepers, which sometimes happens, how about we push them back? And that might give the kids a different experience of ball striking and be able to explore bigger striking techniques or different or exaggerated striking techniques. So I guess one of my things I'd like people to think is, where do you put your goals in your practice and how do you use them? And finally, we move on to the variety and the types of finish. So we're going to put a practice on in a minute where the kids can absolutely begin to explore different types of finish. If the data is telling us that it takes 1 in 6 or 1 in 5 attempts to finish a goal, well, let's give them that in the practice. But let's use players and other interferences that the kids can then have to try and solve live right in front of them. So how do I get round, over, through? How do I move this player so I can just shoot or toe poke through his legs? So let's explore those types of finish. They're so important. It's not just inside the foot or blasting it with your laces. So that's problem solving. Let's go to practice design and have a look at that. So a great little game. It's called It's a Knockout. So rather than a technical practice, and I'm sure there's a plethora of technical practice we could explore, let's avoid bus cues. Let's try and replicate a semi-pressurized, fun, competitive environment. Let's get the players to feel what it's like to be sweating and under pressure and in front of goal and having to make those decisions or react on something they see, space they see. So It's a Knockout. It's pretty simple. Located in the area of the goal mouth. We have 5v5 in this instance, but you can do it 3v3 with no keepers. I've done it 8v8 with no keepers, and I've done it with 23s all the way down to little under 5s and under 8s, and we've had great fun with it. It's always smiles on faces and always lots of goals. If you look around the outside of the practice, you'll notice there's 4 gates, and you can put these wherever you want. I've put them outside of the practice, and we'll come on to why later. The idea is we just play a game of football. If we score, it's worth a goal. However, we've got to try and score more than the opposition. However, the data tells us that 1 and 2 touch is really important in terms of finishing. So let's dial that and dial the value of those up and get the kids to think about 1 and 2 touch finish. So anytime a player has a first time finish, they can eliminate 2 players to either of the gates that are situated on the outside practice. If it's a 2 touch, it's 1 player. So the game can finish a variety of ways. After 5 minutes, whoever's got the most goals wins. Or if we've eliminated all the other players from the other team, we stop the game, we'll have a little chat and we'll start again. You can buy the player back in. If you get some players knocked out and you're underloaded, you've got a choice. Do you go for goal and try and eliminate some of theirs, or do you try and cash in and buy back one of your players from the outside? And you can do that with a pass to the player who's standing in any of the gates on the outside. If they have a positive first touch into the area, that's why I've moved the gates back. So they have to have a big touch, and they can buy themselves back in. Now that also sets up another goal scoring scenario where they might be drifting in from outside the box and just take a touch and curl one in. So you get a different type of finish. But it's fun. You've got to be ruthless. It dials up massively the experiences of shooting and finishing and of having different scenarios in front of you. And it's competitive, and it needs to be competitive. Great to experience competition, but a great fun practice. I guess pause the screen now and have a look at all the data on there. There's some other data in here that we've pulled from other aspects of the study, which we'll go on to later on in some of the other webinars.
Yes, thanks for that. Really wonderful example of taking some information from the data, digesting it yourself, thinking about the implications for grassroots youth coaching. You know, this is the top level of the game, but you've translated it really well in other environments, and then offering us that final practice example there. And with that, thank you everyone for watching this first installment, and look out for the rest within the series. Thanks very much.